Welcome back. In the previous video, we learned how to plot a point on a graph sheet. In this video, we are going to learn how to determine the best position for the x and y axis on a graph sheet. The best position for the x and y axis on a graph sheet depends mainly on the scale of the graph and the values you are going to plot on the graph sheet. Let's take this for example. Let's say that we have this graph sheet and we are going to plot these points on it. The scale on the graph sheet is 2 centimeters to 1 unit on both axes. Where do you draw your y-axis and your x-axis? As I said, the position of the x and y-axis will depend mainly on the scale and the values you are going to plot. Let's begin with the y-axis. The y-axis will divide the x-axis into two parts. So where you draw your y-axis will be influenced by the values on the x-axis. The first thing you have to check is the smallest value on the x-axis. On our table, we can see that the smallest value of x is -3. After you have the smallest value of x, you check the biggest value of x. On our table, the biggest value of x is 3. This means that we have to draw our y-axis in such a way that if we use a scale of 2 centimeters to 1 unit on the x-axis, we will have both -3 and 3 on the x-axis. Now this is what I mean. Let's say that we draw our y-axis here. If we draw our y-axis here, when we use a scale of 2 centimeters to 1 unit on the x-axis, this is how our numbering will be like. So here will be the middle, which is 0. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here. You have -1, -2, -3, -4, and -5 here. We can see that if we draw our y-axis this way, we will have -3 on it. You have 3 on it. We don't worry ourselves with the values in between them, because if we have the smallest value and the biggest value, the values in between them will automatically be on the graph sheet. So as you can see, we have -1 here, we have -2 here, we have 0, we have 1, and we have 2. So it means that this position of the y-axis is okay for us. When we draw the y-axis at this position, we will have both the smallest value of x on the x-axis and the biggest value of x on the x-axis. So this position of the y-axis is okay. Let's look at the position of the x-axis. You have to position the x-axis in such a way that the biggest value of y and the smallest value of y will all be on the graph sheet if we use the scale of 2 centimeters to 1 unit on the y-axis. Remember that on this graph sheet, we are using a scale of 2 centimeters to 1 unit on both axes. So on the x-axis is 2 centimeters to 1 unit, and on the y-axis is 2 centimeters to 1 unit. So you draw our x-axis in such a way that when we use a scale of 2 centimeters to 1 unit to number the y-axis, we will have the smallest value of y on the y-axis and the biggest value of y on the y-axis. If we draw our x-axis here, it will divide our y-axis into the upper part and the lower part. As you have seen, the positive values will be on the upper part and the negative values will be on the lower part. When our x-axis is here and we use a scale of 2 centimeters to 1 unit on the y-axis, you will see that we will have 0 here, then we will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 here. The biggest value of y is 5, so it means that we can find that on the positive side. On the negative side, you have -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, and -6 here. So it means that if we draw our x-axis at this position, we can plot all the y values on our graph sheet. So this position of the x-axis is okay. So after you have the position of the x-axis correctly and the y-axis correctly, you can go ahead and number your x and y-axis as we have here. So determining the position of the x-axis and the y-axis will depend mainly on the scale of the graph, and the values you are going to plot. Let's consider another example. Let's say that this time we are going to plot these points on our graph sheet. The scale on the x-axis is 2 centimeters to 2 units, and the scale on the y-axis is 2 centimeters to 5 units. On the table, the smallest x value we have is -5, and the biggest x value we have is 13. The smallest y value we have is -14, and the biggest y value we have is 37. Let's begin by determining the best position for the y-axis. The y-axis will divide the x-axis into two parts. So we have to draw the y-axis in such a way that we can plot -5 on the x-axis and 13 on the x-axis. Now let's look at something. Let's say that we draw the y-axis through the middle. If we draw the y-axis through the middle and we use a scale of 2 centimeters to 2 units to number our x-axis, we will have something like this. So here will be 0, we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. At the positive side, we have -2, -4, -6, -8, and -10 on the negative side. We can see that we can plot -5 because -5 will be between -4 and -6. So we can plot -5. But we can't plot 13 because when we draw the y-axis this way, the highest value of x on the x-axis will be 10. In our table, we have an x value which is 13. So we can't draw our y-axis here because if we draw it here, we can't plot 13. It means that we have to shift our y-axis to the negative side so that we can create more room at the positive side. Let's say that we shift it from this side to this side. If we shift it to this side and we use a scale of 2 centimeters to 2 units to number the x-axis, we will have this. You have 0 here, you have -2, -4, -6, -8. On the positive side, we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. This will still not be enough. Even though we can plot -5 on the negative side, we still can't plot 13. So we can't use this position for the y-axis because if we use it, we can't plot 13 on the x-axis. It means that we have to shift it again. So let's shift it from this side to this side. Now when we shift it to this side and we use the scale to number it, you have -6, -4, -2, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Now as we can see, we can plot -5 because even -6 is on the x-axis, so we can plot -5 obviously. And we can also plot 13 because we have 12 and 14 here, and 13 will be between 12 and 14. So you can see that you don't always have to be in a hurry to draw your y-axis. You have to look through the values and make sure that you position the y-axis in such a way that you can plot all the x values. So in an examination, you have to study the values carefully before you draw your axis, because if you don't take care, you draw the axis, you plot the points, and you get to a particular point, you see that you are not able to plot that point. So you have to go back and erase all the work you have done and draw it again, which will cost you a lot of time. So you have to take some time and go through the values. Then you position the y-axis in such a way that you can plot all the x values. So we are done for the y-axis. Let's go to the x-axis. What we did for the y-axis, we are going to do the same thing for the x-axis. So you position the x-axis in such a way that you can plot all the y coordinates on the y-axis. The smallest y coordinate we have is -14. The biggest is 37. If we draw our x-axis through this major grid line, we know that here will be the origin, so it will have the number 0. If you use the scale to number the y-axis, you have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. And on the negative side, we have -5, -10, -15, -20. We can see that we can plot -14, which is the smallest value of y. We can plot it on the y-axis because we have -15 here. So -14 will be somewhere between -10 and -15. We can plot it. We can also plot 37 because 37 will be somewhere between 35 and 40. So this is a good position for the x-axis because it allows us to plot the smallest value of y and the biggest value of y. We can now use the scale on the x-axis to number our x-axis. The scale is 2 centimeters to 2 units. So we have -6, -4, -2, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Now with this position of the x and y axis, we can plot all the points that we have here on our graph sheet. So to determine the best position for the x-axis and the y-axis, you have to consider the scale of the graph and the values that we are going to plot. Thank you for watching this video. Subscribe to this channel for more videos. So far, we have learned how to use the scale of a graph to number the x and y axis. We have learned how to plot a point on a graph sheet. We have also learned how to determine the best position for the x and y axis on a graph sheet. In the next video, we are going to solve a question on drawing the graph of a quadratic function on a graph sheet. Bye-bye.